Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I am your host, Dean Phillips. I'd like to thank our sponsors, localenterprise.com. That's enterprise with a Z. They are a provider of CodyBot, which is an unmanned ground vehicle designed primarily for the confinement and disinfection of viruses such as COVID-19. And the time that we're in, that's a very important aspect. It also does fever detection, live camera feed. Due to the pandemic nature, of course, of the virus, the utilization of something like a CodyBot enables companies to carry out a safer work environment, eliminating the risk and the spread, of course, of the disease. I also want to thank our extended sponsor and continuous sponsor, the Precision Metalforming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation. With that, I'd like to thank all of the PMA members for continuously supporting our show, which leads me to our guest today. Our guest is David Klotz from the Precision Metalforming Association. Welcome, David.
Hi, Dean. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So right off the bat, what do you see changing over the next 5 years here as we've moved to a semi-post-COVID, or at least a calming of COVID? Where do you see things going?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dean. I think this has been a unique year, and obviously we moved everything to a virtual event. But in the next 5 years, I think it's the next couple of years it's going to be kind of like a hybrid approach. That's how we're looking at looking at schedules going into next year, kind of a hybrid approach of virtual and in person. I do see a lot of members. Just recently now, in the recent month and a half, I've been starting to travel, getting out there and visiting members if they allow me to visit. And they want to get back to getting engaged, being in person. Some of them have kind of been zoomed out, per se, you want to say, of, yes. They've loved, they appreciate it, but, I think they get tired of that. They miss that, interaction, and that obviously that networking and obviously our associate members, that's so key for our associate members to network with, so the next 5 years, I think it's going to be kind of a blended approach, but I think, people are eager to get back, and so that's what we're looking at our schedule next year, what's going to be live. I do see, where an example is we usually have a technical series, maybe of a certain topic, and we usually do usually it's in a series of three events of that specific topic. And in the past, it's always been in live, and usually do like maybe once in Cleveland, once in Detroit, and maybe down in Nashville or something. So we kind of move it around. Yeah. I think after this year, the attendance has been outstanding for that. We actually have more people attending than we did when we had it live. And so I think going forward, I think instead of being, having it still being that series of three, but maybe now two going to be virtual and one being in person. So we because it's hard for those technical people to go visit, or leave the office for 2 days, right, or leave the plant for 2 days, 3 days sometimes. But this way they can still do virtual, but then still do maybe a longer session, maybe a 3-day at a live event at one of the sessions, and still get that networking atmosphere. So that's something that we're looking at. But I think people are eager to get back. There is some concern and cautious, but I think, in 5 years, I think it's going to be, unless we have another pandemic come out, but I think we'll be back to somewhat kind of normal. And we hopefully that's sooner than later. But, our districts are starting to open up and have events. Obviously, a lot of them are outside, like a golf outing, but our districts are eager to start doing something that they're hearing it from the members. And some members don't want to because there's concern, which is fine. But the members that want to get together, we're meeting all the guidelines and safety precautions, and we're trying to have those kind of events.
Right, and I think that you hit it on the head that there's still an element of that high risk group that are still very cautious, but the majority of people I talk to, they're itching to get back to some face-to-face contact of some sort, because it's very difficult. I think in the environment we've always worked in, we're a very small industry in metal forming, but manufacturing as a whole is not so sizable that it's, can be considered half the community of everything. So with that, we tend to have a very small community approach. And I think that everybody kind of knows everybody within the industry, and that there's a positive of that, which is you want that personal contact with other people, because we're just social creatures as a whole. And Zoom, I think you're right. Everyone is zoomed out, Zoom burnout, you name it. There's a lot of that, because when you're on 4 or 5 of these things a week, it gets exhausting.
Yeah, it is. And I think, the offices that I've visited, plants I've visited, people were doing the safety precautions, but in the office, a lot of the people are back at working there in their offices or cubicles, and then obviously out in the shop they have been, because, a lot of our members, it was essential, businesses, so they stayed open during COVID. But a lot of them are, a lot of the people are back. Some are maybe doing some remote. And so there might be in the workplace a little bit more of a hybrid approach, that maybe some flexibility, more people working from home. Save time driving. But I think, I also, in our office in PMA and in Cleveland, our headquarters, I know people are eager to get back into the office and kind of being a structured environment is what we found from a lot of our employees. So
sure,
but that Zoom out, you say 4 or 5 times a week. Some people are doing 4 or 5 times a day, and it does drain on in it. And again, especially for associate members, it's key to having that in person, because we try to do some happy hours, and we've had some success with it, but it's just not the same, right. And sitting across from each other, looking at facial expressions, and get to know somebody more, also on a personal level, but then also working relationship. It's just not the same.
Right. Yeah, I agree. How has the response been to the Metalform EDU during this time?
Yeah, it's been good. It's a little bit down from last year, because unfortunately, when companies are tight on budgets or have to reduce their budgets, they start in the training area, and marketing is another popular area, but training is usually hit. Yeah. And I've got probably a dozen companies that I know offhand that slashed their training budget, which is, unfortunate, because that's the opposite thing you need to do. But on the other side, we have had, people enrolling. We've probably, our new member enrollment for new members coming on board is very strong, which is really encouraging. And most of those new members coming on board are looking for training, and so EDU was that driver. So EDU has been a huge benefit for us to bring new members on. But EDU sales, it's not as where it was last year, but we are right where our goal was budget wise for this year. So it's a good sign, and still doing strong. And I think what we do need to do is, we really need to next year start building some more content, broaden that advanced servo, training, advanced coil handling, a lot of different other areas. I think building up that library is key to we haven't really built much over the last 2 years, because we switched to our new LMS software last year, and this year we just we wanted to cut back on that development side of it. But I think next year we're going to engage towards the end of this year and going in next year, build on that new. We're looking for new subject matter experts and build up that library. But we did add aerospace training material, mainly specifically for the aerospace industry. We did add about 100 classes in there in the library that wasn't there before. So before we had over 500 classes. Now we're close to over 600 classes, that members can take advantage of.
Great. That's fantastic. Tell me about what have you seen as far as manufacturing as a whole being response to the COVID and understanding what their hazards are. I've gone in several different plants and I see, like, even in their lunchroom, they'll have plexiglass across. So right down the middle of a table, they'll have plexiglass between them, and then they have to sit 6 feet apart. So it's kind of, it almost looks prison-esque, people talking through this plexiglass partition. And it's just so weird to see that, but I understand the need for it and the desire for it because, we want to minimize the impact of this disease. What other things have you seen implemented? I know more people are working from home and are utilizing things like networking and online systems. What have you heard from the manufacturing environment as a whole?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen and what I've heard is, our members have been, just their employees have been a huge success for them and been a huge, you have to get the whole team, wrapped around, hey, you want to come back, we'll make it safe. But the employees had a lot of input and a lot of our companies to figure out what, what's that going to take? And, they had to have buy-in as well. And I think I think a lot of our members got that from a lot of their employees. So I have seen some creative things, I've seen obviously during the summertime, late spring and summertime, a lot of things moved outside. People, some of our members got some tents outside, and moved seating outside so you can have your lunch outside. So kind of spread that out. You're right about the 6 feet across. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are doing the temperature, obviously. So right when the employee walks in the door, they're taking the temperature. They've got to ask a series of questions before they even show up. And then one of our members, it's actually, one of our members in Holland, Michigan, Metalflow, they had a kind of a contact tracing kind of key fob that traced all their steps within the company. And so they knew right when that person entered the door, but then they know how much maybe that individual was in front of somebody else for how long. Mm-hmm. So if that person came down with, maybe a positive case of COVID, or they could tell contact tracing who that got affected in that amount of time, and if it was only a short period of time, then it wasn't not a worry for that, person. So, and then they could see how long that person was in a meeting and the distance from that in that meeting with the other individuals, and out in the tool shop. If a couple individuals are under a press working on a die, they could monitor how long those people were engaged in a close distance if needed, if it had to be. So great tool, and it saved the company thousands and thousands of dollars from what Kelly Springer, the president, had told me. So it was a great investment for them. It was a technology company that was out of Holland, Holland/Grand Rapids, that created that. So there's some unique things I've seen, but I think it was, great. I think that really the employees stepped up for those companies and really helped with, figuring out ways to do it. And obviously things have changed now with, yes, it can come by contact, but mostly it's coming from, through into the air, through your mouth. And so, just covering your face is a critical thing. And so the covering the surfaces is basically has been less of a need now. I mean, still people taking safety precautions by wiping things down, but not as big a need as it was from what we gather.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's, if you just look at how we do things in the other diseases, it isn't that uncommon. I think we try to separate it and say, oh, this is so different. It isn't that different. If you look at how Asia has done, and if you ever see videos of how they've been wearing masks for years, so it was not uncomfortable or a shift from them in society to do that. it was a big shift for us to do it because we just never had done that. It was not our reaction when people had the flu. It wasn't our reaction. And I think in general, it's that mentality you have to overcome of how to stay safe. And especially if you have family members that are in a high risk, like my son has juvenile diabetes type 1. So it's a little bit higher concern for somebody like myself, is because you don't want to bring something like that home to someone who's at higher risk.
Right.
You have older people, you have to be careful. Tell me, where have you heard manufacturing changing right now? Because one of the things that seems incredible is you go into stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, they're out of appliances. You
can't buy a refrigerator anywhere.
Yeah. Everything. You would think that for having this time that we would be further ahead, but we are very far behind. What have you heard from manufacturing as a whole to try and feed that beast, which is the need for it, the takers of this thing that is manufacturing and utilizers of technology?
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of shortage right now out there on the consumer side, because anybody that's in the construction industry, obviously, there's a lot of industries that are being affected with this COVID, but construction is not one of them. So brand new construction, we have members that do some things for the roofing industry, and they can't make it enough. They're working 7 days a week. But the appliance industry, with the shutdown, some of our appliances are made here in the United States, but then some of them are being made down in Mexico. And so, when Corona hit, that whole supply chain got affected over, a month and a half, 2 month time period. And then on the automotive side, our members got really hit that are supplying the automotive, obviously, the first couple of months. But then what we see now is, a huge difference in the last month, 2 months. Everyone in the automotive space pretty much is just swamped right now with work. Yeah. And what happened, I think, was the OEMs were giving releases to the tier ones, but I don't think the tier ones, from what I had a conversation with somebody, they didn't think the tier ones really believed the numbers, and so they were kind of, their releases to their, tier twos and tier threes were little bit less than what they thought, and now they realize, hey, this wasn't it. It was true. We needed this volume. And so they're trying to play catch up right now. So, a lot of our members on the automotive side are really picked up. What's affecting right now, what I see is, just a shortage of steel right now, which is a problem. And so, I was just visiting a member down in Tennessee, and he has a 1,200-ton, 1,300-ton press ready to run, die in it, and they got no steel. They got orders and they got demand, but they have no steel. Yeah. And from what I gather, is a lot of the steel, major steel producers, their furnaces are not, they only have a few that are running. Not all of them are running because the cost of ramping up those furnaces are expensive, and so, because they're worried that the demand is not going to be there. But from what we just had a webinar with ITR Economics for our members a week and a half ago, and basically his response is, unless there's a major, shutdown of the economy again, or we have to shut down again, he sees that the economy is going to be very strong going into 2021. Obviously, as I said, the cruise industry and airline industry is going to be suffering for a little bit, but anybody that's in automotive or construction is going to be picking up really strong. So, and they think it's going to be a good economy next year, even depending on who wins the election. They feel the economy will be strong. So, so there's good signs there. Steel is a big thing, and then a lot of things that people are adapting to is, still workforce. Some companies furloughed, some of their employees. From what I gather, most people brought all those people back, or and they're still looking for more new employees. And so trying to get people into the manufacturing space and to work, there's a lot of jobs out there. This was an issue before the corona happened, and it's still it's a even bigger issue now of the lack of workforce in the manufacturing space.
Yeah.
So some of our members, what they're doing, they're doing more automation. Automation is going to continue to keep growing on, if I, instead of having maybe 1, 2, 3 people to operate, that press, put a transfer system in there, put an automated, stacking line, multiple different tools, put a robot in there to move the part around, or a transfer line. And, now you're down to maybe 1 employee running that press. So automation is going to continue being a big push in the next, 3-4 years, just because that lack of workforce. But, our group and our people in DC continue pushing, we've got to get that message out that people can make a really good living in the manufacturing space if they just come and, try it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm encouraged if we can keep getting the word out through STEM, through robotics, and some of the robotics competitions, and getting people interested. I'm still encouraged by products like Raspberry Pi and things like that get kids interested in programming and get kids interested in robotics and technologies. That's how we're going to fill the pipeline. That's how we're going to be more productive in the future and continue to develop programs that do provide and fill the need that we have for people to be inventive, be creative, and be technologically savvy in those areas. So I'm encouraged by that.
And I feel bad because one of our big events every year is Manufacturing Day for a lot of our members. So they bring students in to visit the plant and see what they're making, and and to see some of this engineering and robotics and the 3D printing, and see some of the technology that goes into building a die and making these parts. And it was some of our members still had some manufacturing there, but obviously it wasn't like it usually is, just because of limiting the number of visits in your facility and the risk of putting the students in and stuff like that. So it's unfortunate that it wasn't as strong of a year that we normally have, because our members have really over the last few years have really picked up with those tours and getting the kids to come in, 7th, 8th graders and high school students to come in and see what manufacturing is all about.
Yeah, and I really always enjoyed the Manufacturing Day events, and it was tougher than ever to find somebody who was doing something this year, because a lot of them got scrapped because schools either weren't in session, they didn't want to support sending kids out to another site after they're trying to work hard to control the environment that they have at the school. It was very, very different to see the events this year. A lot of them were virtual. And I did a search for around me, and it was very low for the number of companies, whereas in the past, there might be 20 events within 30 miles of me.
Yeah.
So
then I think next year, hopefully we can go back to having a strong, and maybe, some companies will do something in the spring or summer if the pandemic is lessened, of course. We can maybe don't have to wait until October, that October first Friday of October to do it. But hopefully next year we'll be back to being strong again.
Yeah. I'm expecting it will. It's just unfortunate. It just the timing of it for where we were this year just it didn't work out. But I'm encouraged, though, where we are with some of the robotics technologies. What do you see in a lot of the manufacturers as far as using robots, using collaborative robots, and even to the point of, and I would even say that this falls in the same sort of category, which is using the unmanned vehicles or autonomous. What do you see as far as some of the technologies that are still expanding?
Yeah, I think definitely the robots that's been popular, especially in the welding area and in cell areas, to moving parts from one cell to the other. If there's a assembly, production side of it, I was at a customer or member in Philadelphia, and they showed me this line that basically does light switches that you buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it was an impressive, operation they had in cell, and they were using robots for moving a lot of the parts around. So it was great to see that. I think that's going to continue to grow. The autonomous side, I see that will grow. I mean, theoretically, you could have high-lows or lifts and moving containers to within the plant being unmanned at some point down the road. I could definitely see that. And saving and resources there, and also schedule it based off your schedule and the production that sees the schedule. It can be typed in, and it's already moving that equipment over. And they're doing that now. Some ERP systems are doing that now, that it's triggering the high-load driver to bring that container over. But you could have an unmanned kind of high-load do that in the future, I could see.
A lot of the high-risk jobs, too, can be moved to robotics too in a lot of cases now. And I've even seen where they're using the drones to go into high risk areas, either very high power lines and things like that, where people would have to climb to do an inspection. They're doing it with heat sensors and things like that, and going into contained environments where you'd have a high risk there, and you'd have to have safety precautions and everything else. They can fly a drone in to do an inspection before you send anybody in. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for that type of technology. What do you see the desire for that from manufacturing?
Is there a desire? Yeah, I think there is a desire on the side, especially on the owners and upper management side of that. I think there is a desire on that. So how they can be automated as much as possible, and that tie that into your internal systems like your ERP or in your releases that are coming in from your customers. How you can automate that and tie that into technology. I know our owners and upper management are definitely would be open to looking at everything that's out there.
Yeah, and it helps. A lot of people think, oh, well, it's taking this job, but it's a high risk job, and it's a job sometimes that it's when you're talking about removing that and reallocating that manpower, it's a win-win, because you can put that person to work where you already had a shortage, you're already short people, and now the high risk position. A robot is doing, which your insurance company likes, because you don't have a human being in there operating it, and it changes your insurance policies and everything else. And I've seen a lot of restructuring as far as that goes, because the risk has been lowered. And as we continue to use technology, I think we're going to continue to see that. Have you heard much out of the that side of it as far as risk management?
Not so much on that side. From the more of what's going to drive it. I mean, obviously that would help, but the more the side of it is going to be, it's because of the lack of the work. Number of people out there for jobs, open jobs right now. So if you can move, solve a technology, and like you said, at a high risk, but that individual that maybe would have been doing that is going to be reallocated to another job that is needed as well, so where there needs to be more human interaction or more awareness. That's where that's where the biggest need is. Obviously, on the insurance side, it definitely saves, but I think it's more of the lack, short of the workforce is where this technology is going to be needed.
I got you. So what other new technologies had you experienced that some of the manufacturers are using it or planning to implement over the next 5 years?
I think I think they're going to continue to, 3D printing is going to continue to keep growing. Obviously, a lot of our members are using that into, more of the plastic side, of kind of for gauges and fixtures, and maybe let's create, make the part and the plastic side of it, see where it looks like, so it can kind of touch and feel it. That's been being done for years now, and I think that's going to continue to develop. Also, metals 3D printing is going to, I know some members have that. That technology is going to continue to be, and that cost of that machines are going to keep going down. So that's going to get more incentive for more companies to get into that 3D metal printing side of it. So, we do a 3D metal. And then, one area is technology is, hot stamping is always there's a huge cost for hot stamping, but there's also a huge need right now because a lot of these materials they're working with are so unique, and it's hard to form some of these parts they need from some of the material they're using. So using hot stamping, right now we've got a hot stamping conference going on. That hot stamping is going to continue to keep, I think, being popular because you can heat that up and it's so much easier to form. Yes, you lose your productivity down. You're not be able to do the volume of it. But, we had a great turnout last year at our event, and, we have a great turnout. This year's is virtual, unfortunate, but they're doing a plant tour of a plant, but we've had a series of this hot stamping, and the attendance has been outstanding. Over 250, 300 people have attended. So, those are areas. The cost to do that is expensive, but and then other areas, servo presses are going to continue to keep more and more of that technology. People are buying servo presses so they can continue to form that part, and instead of just coming down and slamming down, you can form it and control your downstroke and control your upstroke of the press. So that servo press was very expensive, and it's still but those prices are going down. More vendors are offering servo presses, and so that technology is going to continue to keep growing over the next 5 years.
Very good.
And then with servo press, you've got a servo feed on the feed end side. You control that feed with the servo press, and then you've got your that whole line working together instead of just running off a cam on the RAM. Mm-hmm. This way, the servo drive and the feed line is controlled, is running in sync with the servo motor in the press. So it's just a win-win for manufacturers on that side as well.
Yeah, it is, and it's a great technology, especially automating the processes is tremendous. Well, sir, I want to thank you. We're just about out of time here. I'd like to thank David Klotz from the Precision Metalforming Association, who happens to also be one of our tremendous sponsors, as well as Local Enterprise. That's Enterprise with a Z, enterprise.com. We want to thank them also. And go out there and make it a great day.